Okay, let me first check if everything, is working great. So this is a 20-minute introduction about Scrum. It goes not really into the details what you do in Scrum. It explains also a little bit why Scrum is required to solve certain kind of problems. And so first of all, Scrum is not a methodology, what I've been hearing so far this morning a lot. It is a framework, because the thing about methodologies, they give you answers to problems. And Scrum does not give you any answers. It just helps you to make problems visible, and then you can handle them. But you need to decide on your own. You have to use your own common sense and knowledge to answer questions. So in this regard, it is a framework within people can address complex problems and productively and creatively develop products of the highest possible value. And what are important words in there? Some ideas? Framework? People? Complex? Yes. Productively and creatively? Yes. Highest possible value, exactly. And this is the core idea behind it. It's really it's only a framework which gives you a couple of rules, like there was this example about chess. The rules are simple. Whether you're a good player or not depends on you. It's the same thing about Scrum. And this is also the reason why there won't be a Scrum 2.0 or something like that, because it's only a set of rules, and you need to practice the rules to be a good player. People, it's very people-centric. It puts the development team into the center, and the team gets the right, for example, to do the estimations. The team gets the right to make a commitment or a forecast, how it's called now. And the team also takes the accountability and responsibility for that. And this is what enables the team to really accelerate. Complex, and I will dive a little bit deeper into what complex actually mean. And software development is product development, and product development is nothing you repeat again and again. Where production environment approaches will work, you need to think about it differently, so that you have to have an empirical approach to that. Productively and creatively, that goes back to being people-centered. You don't adhere to a process or some steps you have to follow. It's all about the people and their great ideas and how they will collaborate and work together. And by applying all of this, you will be able to generate lots of value to your client. So this is the framework. You have 3 roles. You have the product owner, the team, and the Scrum Master. The slides are a little bit older. Now the team has changed from team to development team, because there was a little bit of confusion when people spoke about the team, whether it's the Scrum team or the team. So now the Scrum team is all 3 roles together, and the development team is this cross-functional team with developers, testers, programmers, and what you need. The artifacts, it's the increment at the end of the sprint. The product backlog, which is the prioritized. In the new Scrum Guide, it's ordered, because prioritization was only about business value, but you also need to consider architectural constraints, risks you have to mitigate, and other things. So now you order your product backlog, and then you take the most important ones and you turn those into the sprint, and this is done by the team. They create their own plan for the sprint they will work in. And it has 5 events. So the sprint is the container which contains the sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, and retrospective. The sprint planning is what takes place at the very beginning of the sprint, where the team looks at the product backlog items they have decided they will be able to develop, and they formulate a plan how they will be able to achieve this functionality by the end of the sprint in a done way. So this is important, where we have the definition of done. And this includes testing. Is when together on a daily basis to assess where they are, because they have committed, have a plan, and they assess themselves, how are we doing? Are we on track? Are we behind? And then they formulate like in Lean, an ad hoc plan for the next 8 hours, the next working day. What to get back? So the daily Scrum is not a report to the Scrum Master, what I often see, that they report to the Scrum Master and justify themselves. It's really for the team, from the team for the team. The Scrum Master actually does not have to participate in the daily Scrum. That's really important. And if I tell those people like, then who organizes it? Well, the team needs to find it out that it's important for them. At the end of the sprint, there's a sprint review where the product is being shown. And I like the rule, no PowerPoint. It's about working software, features being shown. Don't show any statistics slides or whatever which makes non-working software look good. If we have nothing to show, be honest, say we have nothing to show, we failed. I had sprints where we had nothing to show. We canceled the review. And after that, you do the retrospective. In the retrospective, the team reflects itself like, we planned to do this and we only achieved that much of it. Why? What did we do good? What didn't we do? Where did we really suck? What was our problem? And how can we improve? And the retrospective is, if your sprint is 2 weeks long, it's 1.5 hours. It's quite some time you put into that. But this is important because this is what the team needs to self-organize and to have continuous improvement over time. And this is also something we have heard today. So again, here the roles, and this is what I had in the presentation this morning already. So kind of the product backlog with the product owner. They choose a couple of items from the top. They have the sprint planning meeting where they formulate the sprint backlog. And this sprint backlog belongs to the team. Nobody else can tell the team how and when and what they do. It's completely in their control. With that, the team goes into the sprint, has the daily scrum, and produces the increment. And then we have the review. Again, I like to have sales, marketing, customer support there as well, because they tell you, well, can you change those widgets? Because if they're like this, we get 3 calls more a week. Marketing, they know what features will be coming for sure and how they look, and they can sell them better. Maybe you have even a chance to bring a real client in and show them, hey, this is what we do. Do you like that? Because you are one of our most important clients. And then you go into the retrospective. And all of this basically is input to change the product backlog, to adapt what we are going to develop. And then we have the Scrum Master, which makes sure that all of this is really happening and taking place. So now we come to the point about complexity. This is a Stacy graph where we have a requirements axis and a technology axis. If we know exactly what we do on our technology side, we are here in the simple area. And if we know exactly these are the requirements and they are not going to change for sure, we are in the simple area. And this is like a recipe for baking a cake. If I'm not completely left-handed and have 10 thumbs or something like that, I'll be able to produce a decent cake by just following the instructions. However, if I move one of those axes a little bit away from the simple area, I'm in the complicated area. Complicated area is still something where we can work with the processes as we know them, like waterfall and something like that. Because the important thing here is that we analyze the problem right. However, we know that 35% of the requirements change, so we are already up here. And the moment we use some technology where we're not really sure how it's going to work and what kind of problems we will be facing, we are in the complex domain. And pretty much all of the projects which are worthwhile to do are complex. Another representation for that, this is a Canifen framework. It's a Welsh word. It means living domain, the living habitat. It was developed by Dave Snowden, an IBM researcher in 1999. It's the same, simple, complicated, complex, chaos. I ignore chaos for now because it just is chaotic. So simple. Your approach to handle that is sense, categorize, response. You look at the problem. If you can categorize it correctly, there will be best practices for you to implement it. You will succeed. Complicated, sense, analyze, response. Here, the difference is you need to analyze, not just categorize. So you need to have some understanding about the problem domain, of the solution domain. If you have lots of experience in that field, and so on, gives you good of chance of being successful. Therefore, but we don't have best practices anymore, we only have good practices. Success is not guaranteed anymore, but it's likely. In those two fields, we can still work with waterfall, V-model, whatever. Because We can still sequence everything out. But as we know, pretty much all of the software projects are complex. We need to look at this quadrant. And the approach here is probe, sense, response. And probe is you try something out, you look at the results, you learn from what you have done and what happened, and you reapply that knowledge in the next approach. It's like doing an experiment. How many experiments fail, and the scientists don't know they're going to fail? But afterwards, they can explain why, and they learn from that, and they make a better experiment the next time. So here we can use a defined process. Here we need an empirical process. What's the difference? In a defined waterfall process, we sequence our work approach by the activity we do. We plan everything. We analyze everything. We design everything, we code everything, we test everything, and then we ship it. No, at this point we find all the issues. And then we go back to coding and then forward and backward. That's called the hardening phase. And often the hardening phase takes longer or as long as the project itself. And then we release it. This is still like the scientific management approach, the Taylor approach about production lines, where we think about if we double the batch size, we have a 30% improvement of efficiency. Works in assembly lines, not if you work in a complex environment. That's why we need an empirical process control. And you have some upfront planning. And the difference between here and here is here you work by how you do it, and here you work by feature. So you make some initial planning at the beginning, and this can be even more. It really depends what kind of problem you're going to solve. If I make a dating website, I might just start to implement it with my first sprint. If I make some pacemaker, some medical product, I might do some more initial planning at the beginning. Again, this is common sense. Scrum doesn't give you the answer for that. You have to decide on your own. How much do I need to prepare myself in order to increase the chance of being successful? Once you have an initial plan, you plan your very first sprint, and then you do analyze, design, code, test, and release in parallel. And this picture is still too clean. It's more like a cloud. Everything happens at any time. And the nice thing is, because you have some learning experiences internally from within the team or external. Maybe the competition has brought a product onto the market we want to react to. Maybe we go into the next recession and clients are canceling the order, or they just say we only have money until then. This gives you a chance, because here, if we have a problem in the design phase, what can we deliver? Nothing. We only have paper. Here, if something happens, we have at least completed one sprint, and we can give something out. We have some working software. So we then use this gained knowledge internally, externally, especially through the retrospective, and we plan the next sprint. And then we repeat, repeat, repeat. And this brings me to the next slide, like defined versus empirical. So here we have on the y-axis, what is your probability of being successful? If you have a simple problem, it doesn't matter what you use. Like simple, complicated, you can still work defined. But at some point, it drops off dramatically once you go into more complex domains. And we know software development is complex. I hope I repeat myself often enough. And this is the additional area we have covered here. This is where we will have a much higher chance of being successful if we use empirical processes. And Scrum is one of them. It's not the only one. There are others as well. But this only means we have feedback cycles built into our process, which we gather information and react to that. Once we reach the edge of chaos, it doesn't matter what you do, because nothing is going to work. So it's not a silver bullet where you will always be successful, but it improves dramatically your odds of being successful if you work in complex domains. So the 4 legs of Scrum, first of all, it's empirical. It's not defined, it's empirical. We want feedback, and we use that feedback to improve ourselves. And with that feedback, we get transparency. We know all the time how are we doing. And once we have the transparency, we can inspect on that, and then we can adapt on that. This is the slide from this morning. Now it's animated. Additional value. Again, this is the difference where you create a different product, but it's the right product because you were able to listen to your clients. So why Scrum? So these are the pain points why many companies decide to think about something else than what they're doing right now. Releases are taking longer and longer. The release schedules are slipping. The stabilization at the end of a release takes longer and longer. Planning seems to take too long. Changes are hard to introduce mid-release. Quality is deteriorating. Dissatisfied, alienated customers. Death marches are hurting morale. Product becoming prohibitively expensive to support and enhance. Does this sound familiar somehow in this room? And Scrum gives you essentially the agility, flexibility to turn on a dime, like immediately. From one sprint to the other, you can react. And if your sprint is 2 weeks long, you can change latest in 2 weeks. Improve productivity and quality, because the team members are much more motivated to do, because they said, we can do that. We will show you this thing of software working in 2 weeks. So they make an internal commitment, and they want to deliver. And this is a very powerful tool. Instead of command and control, deliver that for me in 2 weeks. Because if I know it takes me 3 weeks, I say, well, there's no chance in how I'll be able to do that. But if I let the people estimate on their own and make a commitment on their own, they will deliver. I can early eliminate risk, because the highest risk items I will do first, because if I can't do those, it's not worthwhile to do the whole project. I've been on projects where I did the most important thing at the very end, and it didn't work, and 2 years of money were wasted. Early realization of value. The features which are most important, there was this example before with Kodak, kind of, do you want the photo in an hour or in a day? Always knowing where you are, easier to make changes, reduced waste, you have more efficient. Lean product that reach the market faster. If I go back and have working software after every sprint, I can make subsequent releases. I might not have to wait a year. I make a first release after 6 months. I gain market share. I also gain some money. And with that, I can even pay the next release instead of having all up front. Increased return on investment because of that. Engaged, empowered workers. It's amazing how the people start to work together. If you see that, it's hard to explain. You really need to see and experience that for yourself if you see a good team working together. And reduce total cost of ownership. Because your product has quality built in, it's cheaper to run. It's like when you buy a car, you can get maybe a really cheap car, but you know, well, all the services and stuff will break down and again. So I rather pay more in the beginning, but I have a better product in the long run, which costs me less. So again, it's a framework within people can address complex problems productively and creatively and develop products of the highest possible value. This is Scrum, essentially, and then you have the points here again. Scrum. Okay, so this would it be from my side. I'm happy to answer questions outside once we do all the networking and so on. Thank you very much.